where you come from really, really matters as to whether or not you can get in the room.
Yeah.
And that's just a reality. It's not a good or a bad thing. It just is.
There's no capital. If you don't have capital, why would you build?
You have these tools in the hands of people and you can do so much more nowadays.
Okay, so third piece, really looking at discovering lost Einsteins, and something that we've talked about recently. Could you take our audience through a little bit about?
Yeah, so I suppose that having done a few startups myself, I've realized how hard it is to for people who've got to actually access capital. So if you've got an idea and you're fortunate enough, I suppose, to be born in San Francisco or maybe London or Beijing, well, I think something like 62% of all capital is deployed. Well, you've got a pretty good chance that you actually have a chance to get capital to build your company if you want to go down that path of building a venture-backed startup. So opportunity is great if you're in those locations. Now, if you go beyond that, let's say across America, it's harder. In fact, actually, MIT did this research report. And I remember reading it. It's actually, I feel sometimes I read this report. You know how some people talk about they read, Satoshi's like white paper.
Yeah.
Had that discovery moment. Well, I had my discovery moment when I was reading this MIT report, and it was called Lost Einstein. He was talking about like how even in rural and mid-sized American cities, there's millions, literally millions of Americans who have not been able to live on their true potential. And it got me thinking. I was like, well, maybe it's not just the Northern Hemisphere. Maybe the biggest opportunity is the Southern Hemisphere, which is even further removed. I mean, imagine you're like growing up in Sao Paulo, or you're in Nigeria or Indonesia. How hard is it for those people to be able to actually get capital? And it was like, I suppose it was reading that report was a really important one to sort of bring to the forefront of what I wanted to do next. And that was really the basis of what I'm doing now, which is infrastructure ventures.
Where you come from really, really matters as to whether or not you can get in the room.
Yeah.
And that's just a reality. It's not a good or a bad thing. It just is, regardless of how you feel about it. So yeah, it is a real problem. Last time I was in Jakarta, one of the problems they were trying to solve was how do we get money into the country to support these young burgeoning entrepreneurs? And we were looking at everything from the association of blockchain to essentially money lending. They call it it's a different translation words there, but basically short-term loans and that kind of stuff. And how they could start getting innovation into the technology they were building rather than buying it in from outside. It was actually quite an interesting couple of weeks. There's no way they can get funding unless you have someone who is of status sponsor you in, which is basically like getting a GP of a VC to know you, which is not easy.
Yeah,
it's fascinating because we always see, like when we're talking about lost Einsteins and Southern Hemisphere, like we see it in the other way around, because when building tech, we have a lot of entrepreneurs here in the North that are like, oh, we want to deploy our tech in the South. And then find it hard to find actually funding for that, even in the North. But what I always find so interesting is that it's people that are from Europe, right, that want to deploy, and maybe they've lived 10, 20 years in Africa, or in this case, Africa. I always find it interesting that we see less African entrepreneurs, and it's solely for this reason. It's like there's no capital. If you don't have capital, why would you build, right? And if you build, you won't build with PhDs from Europe. You probably build with your local team, right? I think this giving the Southern Hemisphere more access to capital, I think, is going to be a massive change in narrative, and I think a perspective over the next 10 years in tech and everything that drives it, right?
Exactly. And I mean, what's interesting is you look at just population growth. I mean, by 2050, I suppose I'm saying this in the question, obviously we have India, China, the US. What countries do you think are the next 3 or 4 behind them in population size?
Indonesia for certain is one of them.
Indonesia's one.
Nigeria, I believe.
Nigeria's other, yep.
Brazil? Argentina?
Yep.
No, Brazil.
And the final one is Pakistan. So, I mean, this is incredible. Just the sheer I mean, and you've got to believe there are incredible companies are yet to be created. And this is why I think interestingly about blockchain fits in, is that there are some capabilities that blockchain provides, which I suppose democratizes tech to the extent that people in these parts of the world can actually build a lot cheaper. I mean, this is the upside of these sort of frameworks that get created, whether it's a wallet or it's some basic building tools, which just give these tools in the hands of people. And you can do so much more nowadays with these tools. You don't need as many people, and you can actually more quicker get product to market and provide the same level of quality as you'd expect in building anywhere. This is what is incredible. It's a huge force of democratizing tech. That's what I see. Yeah.
Do you think, and I would love to talk about, because I think these are very important points, and I think it's a more nice segue into like the advices for what you would give to these entrepreneurs. But I wanted to add one question here, which is, do you also believe that tech has more impact in these countries due to the fact that the problems that tech solves, if say blockchain or AI or anything else, is more impactful due to the fact that there's a different culture, different infrastructure for tech?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it plays out already. This is played out about, it was 5, 10, 15 years ago with the rollout of mobile phones. There is far more value for a farmer in Kenya to have access to a phone, so they can like book the price of his produce at the marketplace, as opposed to like arriving in the marketplace and having to take the price it was given at that time. So even this has been long proven as tech can help leapfrog and in these markets, because it's starting from a different stack. You know, in fact, you can start from a completely afresh. So I think there's that piece which is long been applied. Mobile phones, the most recent one, but the other piece I think is just the access to finance. That's the one that I think is some of this whole concept about capital. But it's really hard for people to get access to a bank account. But with a wallet, a blockchain wallet, you could very easily move money around and transfer around. And let's say there's going to have to be regulation, and there's simpler ways to access a wallet. But the concept of the fungible nature of money and how it applies to with using blockchain for that is really exciting. And I think there's huge opportunities across the whole global south. I'm seeing I know the folks over at Stellar, who have a number of their companies in their ecosystem, are building great technologies in Central and South America around remittances and things like that. And then likewise in Africa and in Asia. I know, for example, when I was, some of the companies that we were supporting at B&B in the finances tech, many of them were gaming companies based in Asia. They were creating these casual games, which are far more higher take-up rate than they had into the global north. And it was really because they were dealing with a local situation. So you had the chance to develop really innovative casual games. And we see instead up here, we're waiting for the next Marvel masterpiece, or it takes now basically years, if not months, to basically to build out the next version. It's a different pace. So I think there's both a technological leap, but also there's a lot of great services that can come out, whether it's it's finance or gaming or many other areas that the global south will actually tend to lead and be a source of innovation.
Gaming has always been huge in APAC. Definitely casual gaming and mobile gaming. Like once mobile gaming got big, it got big really quick with microtransactions in APAC. As to when you would look at the north and the west, mobile gaming is big, yes, but like when it comes to microtransaction casual gaming, it's been looked completely different from a different level at it. But the reason why it's so big is not because the US picked up casual gaming. That was actually Asia.